So welcome everybody. This public meeting of the Dover Warrant Committee is being conducted remotely in accordance with the temporary provisions of the Open Meeting Law. The meeting has been publicly posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded, so take caution with what you show on the screen, as others may be able to see it, and anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. To start, to start, can I ask someone to be prepared to take the minutes for this evening? We don't have a formal secretary on board yet, so we need somebody to volunteer. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi,
Yes, we never got. Apologies. So recording, do we get the script of it or no?
Well, it gets posted on the town website in a couple of days, so it could be handled from there. But I think it's probably easiest just for somebody to take some notes and write them up. It's not particularly complicated.
Yeah, I'm happy to give it a go, Cam.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it. It's always a bit of a burden, but we'll try and sort that out before too long.
I'm just writing what I hear, or just summarizing, something like that.
Yeah, very brief summary notes, particularly since it's recorded. I think we can be really brief. So don't feel you have to come up with exhaustive notes. I don't know yet whether you have access to the town cloud with the Warrant Committee meetings files on it. We have a cloud drive to do that, and I think you can get a model from there. But I did send out the minutes from the last meeting as well, and so you could use that as a template for the meeting.
Oh yeah, it's a good idea. Okay.
And then the other thing. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, yeah.
The other thing, Kevin, if you click on the three little dots on your bottom of your computer where it says more, you can choose the closed captions and show the transcripts. And
cool.
It captures everything that we are talking, and then you can just save the transcripts in the end of the meeting.
Excellent. Okay, then let's formally kick off the meeting. Let me find my notes. Okay. To open the meeting, can I get a roll call of members in attendance? Woody Weiss?
Present.
Simone Azevedo?
Present.
Kevin Bauman?
Present.
Marty Howard?
Present.
Sarah Cadena-Kinney?
Present.
Janet McCormick?
Present.
And I don't believe Nina has joined yet. I think I told everybody that she might be joining late, if at all, because she has a prior commitment. And I'm not sure whether Melissa's going to call in or not. So I think we can just proceed on the basis of that. I would also like to welcome Eurus Alksnitis from the Personnel Board. And I don't think I need to welcome members of the public because we don't have any as far as I can see. Okay. Let me brief, what am I doing? Let me start the meeting by welcoming our two new members. Although, Simone, I think you've been in one meeting already, right?
Correct.
So Kevin, welcome very much, and thanks to both of you. We're honored to have you join us, by the way. Now, moving into the order of business, let me start by noting that during this meeting, we will throw the committee offices open and elect a chair, a deputy chair, and a secretary for the coming year. I would like to add that I'm not intending to run for the chair, as this is my last year as a committee member. I feel it best to hand over the reins to a new person who I would happily support and advise as needed. But before we go on to that, I recommend that in order to allow Eurus the opportunity to present the Personnel Board's recommendation in a timely fashion, that we start with that and then we move on to the normal order of business. So I'm going to throw over the floor to you, Eurus, and we look forward to your presentation.
Okay, and would it be possible to put the PowerPoint on the screen?
Yeah, it's certainly possible. I'm a bit rusty on Zoom. Can somebody advise me? Or alternatively, can somebody just post it on the screen?
Yeah, I think I can.
Thanks,
all right.
Kevin.
What do we got here? It was
trying
in
to do
my
5 things at once.
it was in my email, right? And
Correct.
here that is. And then let me see if I say share. Oh, it's not turned on. I'm sending a request for you to allow me to share.
Yep. You've been allowed.
I've been allowed. Okay. And now I'm going to share screen 2. Are you seeing that?
We are indeed.
Yes,
Thank
we
you
are.
so
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Sure. All right.
Kevin, you may want to put on a presentation mode so it fills the screen for.
Excellent.
Good.
There you go. Yep, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So for those who have served on the Warrant Committee previously, you are aware that the town goes through an annual process of budget creating where you are the key committee. As part of that budget creating process, you get to listen to the Personnel Board's recommendation for the general increase for the population of town employees for the upcoming fiscal year, which in this case would be fiscal 2026. And so the Personnel Board takes this very seriously, and I'll walk you through a few of the things that are key considerations in creating a recommendation for your consideration. Following our meeting tonight, you will have an opportunity to vote on it based on your internal procedures. And then the Personnel Board will likely by the end of the month also have an opportunity to present it to the Board of Selectmen, at which time it would be very helpful to have your recommendation in support of our recommendation in place. May we go to the next slide, please?
Okay.
Just to recap, the major goals of our compensation plan for the town is that we strive to engage and recruit and support a workforce that's qualified and one which really takes to heart their roles in helping the town in doing their particular jobs and tasks for the benefit of the town as a whole. And our system is comparable to most other towns in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and other states. And we take very seriously the need to do this in a data-driven approach and to do it consistently with available data in the overall market that we're in, and also taking into account the compensation approaches and ranges available in nearby towns with whom we compete for labor. Next slide, please. We have in the town several kinds of employee populations. The one that's non-union, which is in the top row you see described as management, professional, and admin. There are some 67 employees in that category, and people in that category are subject to the compensation plan of the town. And they operate within an environment where they get a step increase and annually a general increase, which is the main subject of our presentation tonight. We also have another labor component, which is the fire department, full-time, part-time, and call. And they have an arrangement whereby they do not have a step increase, but they have a general increase. Beyond that, we have two bargaining units, police and highway, and their compensation is determined by periodic negotiations, which set the schedule for those units, and then they receive the annual general increase on top of that schedule. That is true for the police and the highway. And then a number of town employees are employees by contract, and in their case, the contract pretty much determines their compensation and benefits. Next slide, please.
Just a question on that one,
Sure.
Juris,
Yeah.
with the statutory
Would you like to go
employees.
back up?
Yes or no. I just had a question about the statutory employees. Are their contracts are all approved by town meeting? Is that correct?
I believe, I'm not sure that their contracts are approved by town meeting.
But the salaries, the expenses.
But however, their salaries are developed and put into the budget for the town.
Right.
Whether it's the town administrator, who's a contract employee, or others who are contract employees, that probably comes before you as part of the budget making each year.
Right. And the other question I had on that last, well, actually, it was on the first slide when you were talking about hiring and retaining active employees and engaged workforce, as you described it. Now, having worked on the Warrant Committee now for several years, I hear repeatedly and have experienced repeatedly people leaving and challenges in retaining staff. To what degree do you address that? And you don't need to answer that question right now if it fits into your presentation a bit later, but it is a question that I find fairly serious for the town.
It is a challenge for a small town such as Dover to recruit people. And I'll be happy to speak to that point a little bit later in conjunction with another slide, if that's okay with you.
That's perfectly acceptable. Thank you.
So may we then move forward?
Absolutely.
Okay. So broadly speaking, the way that the compensation plan gets put together, as I mentioned a little earlier, there are compensation bands within 5 grades. And within each band, there are steps which occur on a certain anniversary, at which point the eligible employee gets a differential increase based on that schedule for the next year. And it's very traditional and typical of Massachusetts towns to have this kind of a structure. And it does allow us to hire at market, also to reward tenure, and then also cap the salaries at market maximums, because our ranges of compensation are based on market minimums and maximums. Now, this year, the cost of 1% for our upcoming general increase will be approximately $50,700 as calculated by the interim finance director, Carl Valenti. And it takes into consideration the impacts of step increases within our employee populations that are in these compensation bands. Now, the general structure, which we call the market structure, is our basic environment within which we operate. In part because of compensation bands are based on market, and also because when we look at market, we also look at the broader environment, which is derived from data provided to us through several different agencies, one of which is the Department of Labor, such as the Employment Cost Index, and the various statistics for state and local government raises, Consumer Price Index, and also the Social Security data, which publishes an anticipated increase for each calendar year. Then in addition to that, we have in place and have sought to maintain a system of validating our market position. And this is accomplished by having either surveys and or compensation and classification studies. And so the current compensation bands are based on data which was collected in 2021, adjusted for COLAs in 2022, and implemented by our administration and town-to-town administrator, i.e. the previous town administrator, in effect as of fiscal 23. And so that tells us that we're now approaching the time to have another compensation study and or survey. Any questions on this slide? Okay. Then maybe
Just
Yeah.
perhaps just one question. When you say hiring at the market, so that is managed through previous surveys, and then the bandwidths are set by the town, and then we also have an annual adjustment that increases the bands. Okay.
Yes. Right. The annual general increase applies to all the bands that are operating within the town, except for the bands that are under union agreement.
Right. So are those bands fixed in width, as it were? Or is it possible, if there is a sudden period of demand for, high-end employees, that the band can be stretched out, or is that always fixed?
No, it's for the most part, it's fixed. The personal bylaw and the regulations provide 2 or 3 mechanisms by which we can consider unusual circumstances. And those circumstances would be brought to us by a particular appointing authority or department head. We would then review their request. Sometimes we would also do a salary study to see if that particular position is now still within a reasonable range that was established in the original salary study, and if not, then what can we do to help the town retain or compete for people for positions that need to be filled. And to that point, as I'll mention is with regard to the next slide, is that we have now heard from some of our departments saying that they're concerned that we may no longer be as competitive as we were earlier, because the time has now passed, whereby other neighboring communities or environments for certain employment have continued to rise. And of course, we don't willy-nilly change our band every year. We do it every 3 to 5 years. And so that places a greater burden on considering the general increase annually to make sure that we don't slide behind or below market to any great extent. Okay, so now we have the projected estimates, which are created for us by Interim Finance Director Carl Valenti, and you'll see that for each percent, for example, for a 1% increase, you'll see it's done on a fiscal 26 base plus 1% adjustment. The cost of the town would be about $51,000. And then if you could go back to the table, please, if you would. Thank you. And if the town were to approve a 2% adjustment, that cost to the town would be $101,000. And 2.5% adjustments would be $127,000. And a 3% increase would be $152,000. These are based on interim finance director's projections, taking into account our employee populations and their steps and all the rest to create a base upon which to calculate the additional cost for the general increase. Are there any questions on this slide?
So George, is this above and beyond the step increase?
Yes, the step increase is set within the compensation band. And then every year, the town, when it considers costs in the employment market and other costs as they deal with the rest of the budget, they also approve an annual, what's called general increase. And that applies across the schedules for the eligible employee populations.
And so, in other words, these 67 employees, they're going to be getting a raise based upon their step increase, and we're just talking about above and beyond that with the general increase?
We're just talking yes, you can phrase it that way, but we see it as the need to stay economically competitive in the market that we're in. So if the market is rising in terms of its compensation value and benefit to other municipalities, we would not want to slide behind in terms of the annual increases that occur from year to year.
Right.
Another way of looking at it, Kevin, is that the step increases are sort of seniority increases.
Right.
And after you've gone through all the steps, that's it. You don't get any more step increases. And the only increases you would then get is the cost of living ones.
Yeah, but that's a good point. Yes, when you max out, and that's true for those, especially true for those employees who've chosen to stay with the town for the long term and faithfully work for the town. And when they max out at step 10, then what's available to them would only be the annual general increase, to whatever degree that the town approves it.
Okay. Thanks.
I think there's another question.
Yeah, I was muted. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I understand the general increase. You were referring to the general increase and now suddenly cost of living adjustment. It's synonymous. Is that right?
It tries to reflect reasonable cost of living adjustment within the market. Yes.
Okay. And you've done calculations for 1, 2, 2.5, and 3% as those cost of living adjustments, correct?
That would be the cost of the town's personnel budget.
Uh-huh. And I think later on in the slides that I looked at, there's some towns that are at 3.5%, 4%. What caused your group to just look at those particular alternatives?
Well, we'll look at that slide in a minute.
Okay.
We can discuss that also.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any questions about the numbers on this slide? Maybe we move forward, please, to the next one then. So in order to also complement the environmental factors that we see through the various agency indices, we also try to look at nearby communities and inquire of them. We go through a process. Actually, our human resources director does, try to survey nearby communities as to what decisions they've made as to their adjustments, both bargained and non-bargained. And this year, none of the communities that she talked with had made decisions yet. So those numbers were not yet available. However, a number of numbers are available, which were collected and reflected on this little chart. And you'll see that it has in it a number of bargained market adjustments that are known and that were shared with us. And as you can see, the range from 2.5 to about 3 3/4.
And I'm sorry, Juris, these are all what's baked into the union contracts that these people negotiated?
With their communities, yes.
So like if Canton teachers unions were on a 3-year term, they're gonna get a 3% raise between fiscal year 25 and fiscal year 26.
That's right,
Okay.
exactly. And this tells us something about the market environment, the labor market environment nearby and within which Dover operates and competes for employees. Are there any questions on this slide?
It doesn't look like so.
I'll go to the next one then. Okay, so let's look at the 2023-2024 data in the middle of this particular slide. These are some of the agency data that is available to us for the 12-month period ending June 2024. And you can see that the employment cost index for wages and salaries for state, local, and government workers increased 5.1% for all categories, and somewhat lesser or higher percents in specific categories like management and office administration and public administration. These are created through the Department of Labor, I believe. And then when we look at the information available from Social Security, we see that their estimate at this particular point in time for calendar 25 is that benefits will increase, Social Security benefits will increase 2.63% beginning January 25. The final number actually gets published sometime in late October, early November, I believe. And then there's a consumer price index change, also tracked to the 12-month period ending July 24. For Boston and nearby area is 4.0%. That tells us also something about the broader environment in the Boston area having to do with consumer price index. And so taking these factors into consideration, taking into consideration nearby communities' decisions, and taking into consideration what we talked about a little bit earlier, having, in some cases, difficulty in recruiting or retaining staff for the town. It's the unanimous recommendation of the Personnel Board for the town to consider and approve a 3% increase for its employment population. That's the non-bargained component. Are there any questions on this slide?
I have a question, but I don't want to hog the question. So if anybody else has one, please raise your hand or jump in. So, Iris, my question relates to a proposal for a 3% increase when the CPI has increased by 4%, which basically means that the real income of these people is going to increase at a slower rate than the rate of inflation, roughly measured through the CPI. Could you explain some of the logic that the board followed to decide not to cover that, and what consequences do you think that has for retaining employees?
Mhm. Yes. We looked at several factors, including this one. And we saw that there was a range of decisions having to do with annual increases between about 2.5% and 3.75% in our immediate surrounding communities. And we also knew that being in the Boston area, especially if you're in Boston or the immediate Boston communities, nearby communities, you will also have cost factors in the urban area. That's what the U is for, I believe, which may not precisely apply to Dover at any particular specific number, but would affect certainly the people who are trying to recruit within the sort of the greater Boston area or metropolitan area, whereas we're somewhat on the outside of that perimeter. And I think we also felt that knowing that our community sometimes tends to make more conservative decisions with regard to increases, we wanted to take into consideration that particular factor, and also at the same time try to maintain a 3% level, which we thought would get us closer to market than any lower increase that we might suggest.
Artie.
Yeah, Juris, just so I understand, again, this 3% is the general / COLA component of the compensation, correct?
We call it a general increase.
Yep. And so each of these employee, or not all of them, but many of them, most of them, I think, if I understood the first slide, are also getting a step increase, correct?
That is correct.
So that when you try to address Cam's question, where are these people ending up relative to the 4% and other indexes that you have on this slide? I think it would be helpful to understand what does a step increase generally represent with respect to a percentage increase for the average employee? Do we know that?
The particular method with which the current compensation bands were set up and implemented by the town now a couple of years ago or so has bands within which the step increases vary within each band. They're not necessarily one number, but they vary within each band depending on the particular kind of positions that those bands contain. I know that in his projection, Carl Valenti, in that footnote a few slides back, used the percentage of 2.5% as an average step increase for his purposes of projecting the cost to the town. So using that as an example, one would look at a particular employee and say, okay, on the average, this employee might receive a 2.5% increase from last year to this year as part of their step. But that's not necessarily, that might be true on the average, but would differ from employee to employee depending on which band they were in.
But I guess if we're looking at that 4% CPI for all urban consumers, it sounds like many of the employees will hit that 4% or better, when you add in the step? Is that is that a correct way to think about it?
I'm not sure that we're talking apples to apples. That's a generalized number for a particular group of data that the Labor Department uses to develop that increase.
Mhm.
I don't think it's equivalent to a 2.5% increase or a 3% increase.
And Marty, the other thing you've got to remember is that anybody who's been here for 10 years, and we have quite a few people like that, they don't get the step increase.
Okay, so it's not relevant for many of the employees. Yeah.
Right, right.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe we go
Okay,
back.
and
Yeah, go ahead.
any other questions? Sorry, yours,
Yeah,
please.
no, go ahead.
No, I was wondering if anybody else had any other questions on that.
I actually, I have a quick question,
Mhm.
just to try, as a new person trying to understand everything here. So is there a percentage of turnover historically in Dover that we should be paying attention to? And, if there is a particular category of, if a specific department that is more difficult to retain, that could have a
No.
more impactful situation?
We know, I can give you one example that's actually come before the personnel board recently, and that's an illustration of what could be true in more than one department. But this is a particular department, which is the Board of Health, which recently got approval for a shared public health nurse that would share with another community, and they're ready to recruit this person. This position would report to our Board of Health director. And Board of Health were concerned that what we had available within the band for that particular grade level might not be sufficient to be able to successfully recruit someone in particular, because right now nurses are in short supply. And the answer which we were able to work out with the Board of Health was that we felt that there were a couple of mechanisms within the personnel board regulations which allow people to be hired not necessarily at the first step or minimum step, but at a higher step depending on qualifications and experience. And that there was room within the band as a whole to be able to accommodate someone who would need to be coming in at a higher level than a step one. Now, as this compensation band ages, so to speak, and until we get into the process of redoing our compensation bands as a result of a salary study and survey in 2026, we want to be careful so that we don't unintentionally allow us to land in a place where this would make it even more difficult for a department such as the Board of Health to fill important positions.
Yeah, I've got another example as well. The town has had an opening for an IT support staffer. I don't know the exact title or what band that would be in, but we just haven't been able to fill the position because we haven't been able to attract people on the salaries at the salaries we're offering. Now, that may also be that they don't find it particularly appealing for being support personnel for a very small town. So that it may not be just a salary issue, but we also have those sorts of challenges in certain areas.
And I know that our new human resources director would be in a better position to tell us what the turnover rates are at this particular point in time. And we can ask her to give us that information. It's just that I'm not, I don't have that specific information with me tonight.
Right. Fair enough. I think that would be quite interesting, Eurus, to understand that, because I am concerned that because we have so historically been so conservative that we might be sort of cutting off our nose to spite our face. Now, I'm not keen to raise salaries higher to a significantly higher level, but I do want to understand what the implications of it are.
And is there a requirement that all employees work full time in the town hall, or they can also work remotely? Like, for example, the IT person, because I think that this is playing a huge role nowadays in the hiring ability for anyone.
Right.
Right.
In that particular case, they're looking for somebody who's on site to help with on-site issues. We do have a company that does provide remote support, but often it needs somebody with some technical competence on site to solve issues, and I think that's the bind there, Simona.
And I
But
think,
I think Simona brings up an important point. Yours is the personnel board, if I'm correct, only deals with salary compensation, but doesn't address total compensation. Is that correct?
that's been historically the case, yes.
Yeah.
So, Woody, what are you implying there? What other compensation elements should we be thinking about there?
Well, things like flexibility about where you work, whether you are allowed to work from home, can have a significant impact on whether or not people are willing to accept a certain salary. So thinking, it's harder to quantify, obviously, but thinking about the total compensation, both kind of financial benefits in terms of health insurance and things like that, but also flexibility can have a significant impact on recruitment and retention beyond simply where we fit in the salary structure.
Right. And to my knowledge, the town has made accommodations in certain circumstances. Some positions probably lend themselves more readily to off-site work than others. And then that would have to be worked out between the appointing authority and the town administrator.
Yeah, I think, I mean, as someone who moved to Dover 6 years ago, and thinking about how I used to go to work and so forth, I find that is something that we may need to keep in mind as we try to hire more people, how these people will get to Dover, which technically is, depending on where you are against traffic, but most of the time you're going to get stuck in traffic anyways. And then when you get here, there's very little to be done. So, you're going to be working, but if you want to grab coffee, well, you can go to Dunkin' Donuts, but there's no sense of, where do you exchange information? Like I worked before in biotech. You would step out of the office and you would meet people all the time to talk about whatever you were doing. So these things I feel that still have play an important role when we try to retain people or even attract people to work, particularly in a small town. So, like how can we bring eventually even like the sense of community or possibility to grow in the organization? At one point, we will need to look into this as well.
Yeah. And that is, I think, something that each appointing authority and in conjunction with the town administrator would be in a position to work through with their individual departments.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? I think we'd like to sort of stew on this a little bit, Eurus. But if you could get us the turnover rates for next week's meeting, next Wednesday, you don't need to attend. If you could just forward them to us, that would be useful, and we will attempt to make a fairly quick recommendation.
Okay. I will be happy to ask our Human Resources Director.
Great, thank you so much.
Can I actually ask one more quick question?
Sure.
Is there any kind of performance component to that? Like I understood that they can have this step in the salary range, but is there a bonus for performance or some sort of performance evaluation that also happens?
Well, there is a performance ingredient or component for each employee to receive a step increase, and that's under the authority of the appointing authority. So if there is some major reason why someone ought not to get a step increase, then that gets initiated by the appointing authority. Now, the other end of it, the bonus, we do have a recommendation in our last compensation and classification study to start down the path of implementing a pilot bonus project. In other words, the idea would be for people who are perhaps maxed out to, in collaboration with their directors, to define a specific added value project that would be of substance and significant importance to that department or its operations. And the individual would then complete that project within whatever the defined time period would be and the plan would be. And if evaluated to have been completed successfully, then there would be the opportunity then to receive a bonus. But we haven't gotten to the place where we've actually launched a pilot yet. That still remains to be done.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, then I really only have one further question, Eurus, and seeing that beautiful background, have you got aspirations to leave us in Dover and head to the West Coast?
No, my granddaughters are on the West Coast, but they're in the LA area. So I'm not at the Golden Gate.
Okay.
I thought I'd better switch the Aurora Borealis out of my background because it was hopefully not causing anyone else to get queasy with all that funny color background. So I went to the beach instead.
Fair enough. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We really do appreciate that. And we will try and come up with a recommendation quite quickly.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. You're welcome to stay, of course, but I know you probably have other things to do and don't want to watch us doing sausage making or something.
Well, the personal board gets to do a fair amount of that. And whenever these general increases come around, we wonder whether it's time for us to get a small increase on top of our zero
Yes.
compensation.
Yes, exactly. I'd like 100% increase on mine. Thank you, Eurus.
Yeah, thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Cam, you can have 100% increase on nothing. So yes, you may.
Yeah, exactly. That's that was my sort of hidden humor in that. Okay, so now we've got to move on to the agenda of tonight, which is firstly the acceptance of our minutes from July 15th, and which Melissa Herman so gracefully prepared. Has everybody everybody who was in that meeting, so Kevin, that probably excludes you, had a chance to read these minutes, and do we have any changes recommended?
Nope.
And I guess, do I hear a vote?
So moved.
Seconded.
So the notion here is, Kevin, that you have to come up with some wording that gracefully says we accepted the minutes.
I feel like I need a dictionary with everything that we have to say here. Like, can we just agree to say yes or no?
Well, No, but I was actually talking to Kevin about what he writes up in the minutes because it's
No, I understand, but I'm joking because like sometimes like some of the language I'm like I need to pull up like some kind of
that's my
town
own
hall
flowery language.
dictionary.
No, we don't need to. I was just using some flowery language. Sorry, there's no formulaic reference there. Kevin can show a little bit of initiative there. But in any case, we've had a motion, and so can we put that to the vote? So Simone,
Yes.
Marty,
Yes.
Sarah, you're on mute.
Not at the meeting, so I will
Okay,
pass. Sorry. Thank you.
no problem. Janet
Yes.
and Woody.
Yes, yeah.
And Cam, yes, too. So unanimously accepted the minutes. And if you could write those up, Kevin, and forward them to the next chairman, I'm sure he will make sure they get passed through the system to get posted on the website. So our meetings get posted, get recorded, and the recording gets posted on the Dover YouTube channel, and the minutes get posted on the town website together with the agenda. So that's just to explain what this process is. So let's move on now to the nomination and selection of warrant committee leadership for this coming year. And I think I've already pointed out that I am not intending to stand for the chair again. So I want to throw it open to the floor for perhaps start with a discussion and hopefully we can make some recommendations. So I would suggest that we start with the chair of the committee. So do I hear any suggestions, discussion, proposals?
Sure.
Go ahead, Janet.
So considering that Woody was a vice, what do we call it, vice chair? Second chair?
Deputy, yeah.
Deputy chair.
Deputy.
This prior year, I feel like he understood the chair's role pretty well. So I would recommend Woody be considered for the chair.
I would second that recommendation as well, having been on the committee last year. I think it makes great sense that he would progress to be chair this year.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Hi, Sarah. Good to see you.
Good to be off the highway. Hi, everyone.
Sorry, Woody, what's your last name?
Weiss.
Weiss.
Sorry, Woody. I shouldn't answer for you.
That's fine, Cam.
I'm sorry, what was it?
Weiss, W-E-I-S-S.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody's names are in the emails as well, so you can see
Oh yeah.
last names too. So are there any other suggestions? And hearing a loud silence, I will take it as Janet has nominated Woody for the chair, and Marty has seconded it, and I'll put it to the vote. I'll start with you, Sarah. I'm just reading from my screen, so no particular order.
You're muted,
Sarah?
Sarah.
What is your vote, Sarah?
She's frozen.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Janet?
I guess I vote affirmative.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, I agree with
Um,
myself for the first
Simone?
time.
Yeah, I support it. I support
Thank
it.
you.
Mhm.
Marty Yeah, I support it as well.
and Kevin?
Sure, I support it.
And Sarah, you froze when we asked you last time.
I'm back. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yes,
Do you,
I'm in favor of Dr. Weiss's nomination for chairman of the Warrant Committee 2024-2025.
thank you. And I too vote in favor of it. So, Woody, it seems like we've got a unanimous proposal, and I didn't have the courtesy of asking you whether you were willing to accept it. So I hope that you are.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So now I'm going to, well, Woody's having electricity problems up in Maine. And normally under these circumstances, he would just take over the chair and conduct the rest of the meeting. But since he's not there, I'll throw it to you, Woody. What would you like to do?
Well, I think it'd be great if you'd continue to chair the rest of this meeting, unless I get the power restored sometime in the next couple of minutes.
Okay, I'm happy to do that. Thank you. So now we move on to the deputy chair. So I'm wondering where we stand there. Silence. I don't want to judge your positions, but I would recommend that Marty Howard become the deputy. And I do that not because he's had such a long experience on the committee, but because of his strong financial background as a long time CFO of BU. I think he probably would serve that role very well. But I don't want to prejudice your decision making. I'm not trying to impose. So if somebody else would like to throw their hat in the ring or recommend somebody else, please do. Any
Kim,
comments?
one quick question. Like, I'm just,
Yep.
what's the major obligations of like the chair and the deputy chair, or is it all that much different from the other seat? I'm just curious as to what that even entails.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Kevin. And I think we actually need to perhaps discuss that. One of the items that I was looking at on my agenda that I'm trying to run now on behalf of Woody was that I think it'd be a great idea for the committee to hold a meeting fairly soon that discusses reviews how we worked, how the committee worked last year, and what we did well and what we could do better. Because I think that way we can only it's a path for improvement. And we also had quite a few people who aged out of the committee in this last year. And I would strongly recommend that we consider inviting them to such a meeting as well. But that's just background for answering your question, Kevin. I wasn't trying to deviate, but really we decide what everybody does in the end. But traditionally, what has happened is that the chair conducts the meetings, and that inevitably means we have to work on an agenda for the meeting. We need to make sure that all the documents are together. So, for example, a presentation this evening from the personnel board, and make sure you've all had a chance to review those. So there's a lot of little administrative stuff involved in it. It also involves meeting with various, often with the town administrator, often with the finance director. So, for example, this week, Marty, well, I was invited to consider, the planning for this coming fiscal year, and invited by Michael Blanchard to come and meet in the town hall to discuss that. And I didn't particularly want to go by myself, and since Woody is up in New Hampshire, I took the initiative and invited Marty to join me as well. And we both met with them. So that's an example of some of the work that the chairman does. I've found it at times, pretty demanding, but other times I found it extremely enjoyable, and I've learned a lot and appreciated working with so many great people in this process. And so that's pretty much my feeling about the chair. But Woody, you could perhaps describe more the division of labor that we chose to follow between chair and deputy chair.
Yeah. So I think the structure that our committee has followed over the last several years is to have a chair and then a vice chair, and the vice chair steps up to the chair pretty much annually. That's different than the way the Sherburne Finance Committee works, where the chair has no term limit, as I understand it. The chair just stays in place until his or her term when the Finance Committee ends. The chair is responsible with the vice chair for setting the agendas, kind of doing a lot of the communication with the town, and dealing with a lot of the negotiation that goes on around the warrant as it's kind of getting finalized. And the vice chair is participating in that in a way that allows him or her to hopefully step seamlessly into the role, kind of as things go along. One of the, I'd say one of the challenges we have this year that's even greater than usual is that because so much of the institutional memory of the committee is kind of rotated off this year, we're in a position where we have to bring a group of new people up to speed, learn the process, learn about how the warrant committee works, and at the same time be doing our job of working with the town administrator and the select board to develop a budget that gets presented to the town meeting. So I think we should spend time at a meeting, maybe our next meeting, talking about the process of incorporating the new members and bringing, gaining some knowledge in the committee around what our roles are and how things work. Not just the leadership roles, but the roles of all the members.
Yeah, I agree with that, Woody. The only thing I would say is there's absolutely no expectation that the chair only lasts for 1 year. I think it's just through circumstances that's happened in the last couple of years, and it's mostly got to do with the fact that we've been approaching our retirement from the committee, where we're only really allowed to be on the committee for 6 years. So this is my 5th year, and as a result of that, I think it's just important that I do move on. And
yes,
but I'm very happy to support Woody and whoever becomes deputy in any way I can. So I guess to come back to
we really did. Yeah, sorry, Cam, I'd say we've really benefited as a committee from the institutional memory.
Yes.
You know, that we had a secretary who had been on the committee for 6 years plus, and Cam and Melissa and all the other people who rotated off of, and Janet and Sarah have all provided kind of an expertise and knowledge base. And it's going to be challenging, I think, this year to work through the changeover, which is great. It allows us to kind of look at things afresh. But there, I found it daunting when I joined the committee a year and a half ago to become knowledgeable about the process and about some of the issues that we deal with.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we all feel a little bit daunted when we first join, and I think we're conscious of the fact that we need to help new members in any way we can. So I'm certainly happy to chat with new members if they've got any questions about process and procedure, and I'm sure Woody would happily do the same, as would Janet and Sarah. So reach out if you think you're sort of starting to sink underwater or something before you allow yourself to drown. Okay, I think we should.
Do we
Sorry,
need a
Woody, go
second for
ahead.
Marty? Do we need
Well,
a second
I
for
don't know.
Marty's?
Yeah, I wanted to sort of leave it open. Does anybody have any other ideas as to who might serve as deputy? I don't want to crown Marty just because I proposed him. Then I would like to formally nominate Marty for the deputy role. Do I hear a seconder?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Simone. And then I'll put it to the vote. Woody?
Aye.
Janet?
Aye.
Sarah?
Abstain.
Okay. Simone?
Aye.
Kevin?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a new deputy chair. Congratulations, Marty, and I think that's great. Okay.
Thanks very much, Kim.
Then let's move on. The next position is the secretary. Now, Woody has been alluding to institutional knowledge. Peter Smith was the long-term secretary of the committee, and he did an amazing job. I think we were all just in awe of the work that he did. And he just had a system in place that he was extremely comfortable with, and he had a lot of knowledge from being on the committee. I think it was a total of about 8 or 9 years, because he had an appointment, an initial appointment, and then he got through his 6 years, and then 2 or 3 years later, he was asked again to join, which he accepted. And I tried to ask him to join again after a year, but he said, no, thank you this time. So now we have to find somebody to replace him. And as my understanding is, the secretary has not an enormous role, but it's a demanding role. So it's managing the minutes of the meetings is typically what the secretary has done, but also the other task, which is not insubstantial, is really being the person who organizes the preparation of the Blue Book, which, as you probably are all familiar with, is our annual report, essentially, to the town, and it contains all the motions that are being presented to the town for consideration that are largely financial, but also some of the non-financial warrants that come from citizens' requests. And that Peter did just so expertly. We just sort of sat back and watched in awe. But we don't have a Peter this year. And so that's going to be something we have to wrap our arms around. And I did mention this meeting I had in the townhouse yesterday and that Marty attended. And Marty actually really raised this question about what sort of support can we expect from the townhouse, seeing we're all voluntary and we don't necessarily have an enormous amount of time to do a lot of sort of preparation work. And both Michael Blanchard and Carl Valente agreed that there is a place for more support for the preparation of the Blue Book. But I also think we need to come up with a discussion about how we present it, whether we can digitize it, whether we can transition from a physical book to an online result. So I think we're not going to necessarily answer those questions tonight, but it would be good if we could find somebody who is willing to husband that process through and perhaps head up sorry, I don't know why I'm going fuzzy at the moment. It's probably because I'm fuzzy in my head. So please forgive me for that. But I think we do need to wrap our arms around that somehow. And if anybody is willing to step up to do that, I think it would be wonderful for the committee.
Can I add some comments to that too?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is my last year as well, and I've seen the members and chairs and deputy chairs come and go and not finishing the terms. So one of the things I noticed was when I first joined, there was a huge effort to diversify the Warrant Committee, to have different age groups and to have different personal life and all that. But what I found out is that it is very, very difficult to be on the Warrant Committee when you have other responsibilities like full-time job, children, travel. So knowing that this secretary job has to be somewhat dedicated, because we need that person at almost every meeting. And obviously we need that person for the annual meeting very much so. So I want to make sure that we find somebody who's new to the Warrant Committee, so they can actually get good at this year, and then be able to do the job easily for the next few years, and also have the time to be really truly available for the Warrant Committee process.
Right. But the availability, I think, Janet, we might be able to manage some of that downwards. I think Peter was just far above and beyond anything that we could really normally expect for somebody to do. And I think we can sort of aim at a little bit lower, try get a lot more help from the townhouse. But you're fundamentally right. It does involve somebody who's prepared to own it and make sure that stuff happens. And the core of that is, I think, preparing the Blue Book. It also has historically been doing the minutes, but we might well be able to have a round robin for the minutes. That's not necessarily something we have to impose upon a secretary. And
can we also do the AI debrief incorporated somehow?
Yeah. That certainly is a possibility as well. Yeah. And so I think we just have to look at it and work out how we can make it into a manageable job and support whoever takes it up. I really don't think the committee should just say, okay, you're it,
Yeah, exactly.
and leave them to it, because it is a big learning curve. And having said that, Peter Smith has said he would be happy to mentor and tutor whoever took on that job, so that they could understand exactly what was going on. And perhaps if somebody is sort of thinking they might be interested in doing this, I'm sure Peter would only be too happy to have a discussion and give you a much clearer picture of what that role really involves. And he's offered to do that, so that's something else to consider.
What about also, would you be able to do 2 people co-role? Is that an option?
Yeah, I think we can do it, organize it however we like, Janet. I think I don't have any. I don't think there are any rules saying that. I mean, I don't think there are any rules saying we have to have a chair and a deputy chair either. It just sort of happened that way through historical circumstance, I think. But I've always
I
viewed
had
the
the same
committee
thought
as one of equals.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I had
Woody.
the same thought as Janet. And it might be particularly helpful this year to have 2 people share the role.
Mm-hmm. Why don't we what do you call it, table the discussion, and people can think about it a little, and we'll address it maybe our next meeting. Would that make sense? Because I don't think we need to rush it, particularly if I mean, at the moment the main work is just making sure we get the minutes out, so that's not particularly onerous, but everything else, we can sort of think it through and decide what we're going to do.
I'd just like to add that my volunteering for the minutes for this meeting was in no way an indication that I wanted to assume
Oh,
the
Peter!
secretary
Oh,
role.
Kevin! I'm
Oh, you
so
were it.
disappointed. I thought we had you
I
in
can
the
see this one
funnel.
coming a mile away. No.
No, there's no expectation.
All right,
I
thank
think I think as far as minutes are concerned, I think it makes sense for us to do a round robin on that. We're all capable of
Right.
of taking notes of what happened. So no, there was certainly no indication, but I understand why you had to protest. So do I hear a motion? Sorry,
Sorry,
Simona.
I just want to say one thing. I think it would be extremely helpful to have a conversation with Peter and really understand what is,
I do too.
what happens. I actually was curious even about the survey that the town sent, because one of the questions is like, do we keep the blue book, printed version? So I don't know if they have any results to give us a sense of direction, but I'm assuming that also doesn't eliminate the need to prepare what will be
Right.
discussed. And
The content still has to be done, yes.
Yeah,
But if we were to somehow, and maybe the goal is just to put some of the data on the website and reference that in a trimmed down blue book. I think there are lots of options that we've got to consider there, and I'm sure we'll get help from the town to try and put those options into a consistent solution, as it were.
Yeah, because I personally, for me right now, I need to think, just because of other things that I am getting involved as well. Nevertheless, I'm more than happy to help in any form or shape, in whatever direction that we take. I like the idea of splitting responsibilities, or kind of like creating a more collaborative approach to this. But I think there's, at least for me, I have so much to learn that, it's interesting to hear more and more people talking about, okay, this is what happens. Like for me so far, I'm on vacation on the Warrant committee, because I feel like I joined in June, July, and it was, this gap. And it's like, oh yeah, this is easy, right? But I know it's not. So I'm waiting for the storm to come.
Yeah.
So, but if we could get like Peter to explain, I think it would be very helpful for particularly the new people on the group.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we could we should table it to discuss next week. What after you people have had a chance to think it through a little bit. But I would strongly recommend, if you're even vaguely interested in it, giving Peter a call, and I'm quite happy to facilitate such a call to actually find out, and so you can ask in detailed questions what he did and what he thinks the amount of work. How many hours a week is it entirely? I don't think any of us have any real conception of that. But I don't think in the end that we're going to be able to do what Peter did, and I don't think there's an expectation that we should.
Kim, also, I want to say that Peter did an incredible job, but we also don't want to do exactly what he did going forward. I think we
Exactly.
definitely want to make a lot of things digital, electronic, and go away from how demanding it was of one person.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. Okay, so do I hear a motion to table the discussion on the secretary position until next meeting?
So
Yeah.
moved.
Thank you, Marty. Somebody to second?
Second.
Thank you. I'll take a quick vote on that. We have to vote on all these sorts of decisions. So Simone,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
thank you. Marty,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Woody,
Yes.
and Cam, yes, as well. So let's move on. Now let me just go back to my cheat sheet for deciding what that we've got to discuss next. So one other critical process that the Warrant Committee gets involved in is to liaise with the various town departments, committees, commissions, so that we get an understanding of what their financial needs are. And so on an annual basis, we come up with a list of liaisons, and also we tried last year, and I think to some degree it was successful, but I think we can discuss how we can make it better if we were to have such an annual review of how the liaison thing worked. Some of us found it okay, and others found it challenging. And others found that they were faced with brick walls and weren't able to accomplish very much. So I think it's something we need to look into. But I think it's essential that we have a fairly close contact with these various departments so that we can understand what's coming down the pipeline, and that we can and typically it involves attending meetings. It's mostly in the voluntary committees that you might attend. If you were a liaison there, it's more just attending the meeting of the committee, or at least finding out what's on the agenda, and if it has any financial elements on the agenda, to at least understand what's going on, and maybe chat. I mean, a perfectly acceptable approach there would be just to call up the chair of that committee, or whoever is the leader of the committee, and sort of have a chat about what's happening, but so that they know that they can talk to you when budget issues come up, and so that we have a good conduit into the town organizations. So that's something I think we need to think about pretty soon. And I think that's going to have to be on an agenda in a fairly short term. So perhaps next meeting, although I think we're starting to get a few things we need to do there. But anyway, I wanted to put that into people's head that we're going to have to jump through that hoop as well in the coming weeks. The other
Cam,
one
do
that
we have do you have a list of the committees that we would need to interact with?
Yes, and in fact, we did publish on the shared drive uh, that list for last year, and I know Simone and Kevin, this applies to you as well, that the town hasn't yet set up your access or your email addresses. I did ask that of Michael Blanchard yesterday, the town administrator, and he said yes, they were getting onto it. It was a bit of a process that they had to go through. I thought it was just a simple thing of just. So the thing is, these are Google accounts, and you have to buy those accounts, and they try to keep those to a minimum, and so they tend to wait until all the committees have sort of had their resignations and whatever, and then try and use old accounts rather than paying for yet another account. But what I think they discovered, and what I discovered yesterday, is that an archival process, because we're a government institution, the records of our meetings have to be, including our emails, have to be available in case some issue comes up where we get a suit against the town and they demand access to relevant email documents or whatever. So those accounts can't just be killed. So they have to be moved into an archive, and then it takes sort of a long time. But Michael said he's hoping to have that completed this week, so you will have access to them fairly soon. But I'll keep on his case as well. If I haven't heard back by Friday, I'll make sure that I follow up on that. But so that's a long way of saying, typically you'll be able to just go to the shared drive and look up what we did last year, and get it all. But if you're interested, I'd be happy to email you, Simone, the list for last year, and I could do the same for you, Kevin, so you get a sense of it as well. And I'll do the same with Nina. So let me take a note of that.
Kim, on that point, I don't know how easy it is, but if it's possible to get the list such that the same person, if the same person has multiple departments, that we have only one person approaching that person about multiple departments instead of having many-to-many relationship.
Yeah, no, one to many or one-to-one relationship
One-to-one,
would be
hopefully.
ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although we do, in some of them we did have. So one of the things we did in previous years was to say we'll have prime liaisons, and the new people won't get a heavy load on that in that, but they might become a secondary to somebody else and learn with them, what's involved in it. But that's just the decision we took last year, or we've taken in the past. It's not, we don't have to follow that, but again, we need to think it through. What's the best way to do it? And I think that's a great idea, Jenna. Okay, so liaisons, that's liaisons. The next issue that I need to raise is the question of guidance to the various town departments on how they should prepare their budgets. So their budgets are due by the end of November, and the Warrant Committee has the authority, and there's an expectation that we write a generic letter to the various departments of the town outlining what our expectations are of those departments, and giving them guidance as to what we expect from them. And typically that involves looking at the letter that was sent last year and deciding whether that's acceptable, what changes we want to make for it. I think there's an opportunity for us to beef it up somewhat. But again, I'd like somebody to own that. Woody, you and Marty might want to decide how you want to proceed with that. But the expectation is that by our next meeting, we have a draft that we can seriously discuss. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Woody.
Yeah, I anticipated that this would be something we need to get done reasonably soon. It does, at least to some extent, require an anticipation of what the what the town's financial situation is going to be going into town meeting.
Yeah,
I think the
typically
last 2 years we've said flat service. Is that correct?
Yes, that's been pretty much the standard guidance that has been done. And on top of that, a recommendation that if they have increases of any sort, that they point out exactly what those increases are and justify them, so that we've got an understanding why they might want to increase that. Marty, I know you had some thoughts on what might go into that as well. I wonder if you want to
Yeah, I haven't had a
say
chance
anything
to
there.
really articulate specifically how we might put it into the memo, but at a broad level, I think what we discussed yesterday at the town hall was ask if they might be able to include in their narrative some of the metrics that they use to measure the effectiveness of whatever the service is that they're charged with delivering. And maybe in some broad way, describe how they get comfort or satisfaction that they're being good stewards of whatever the allocated resources are and seeking to maximize the value of the delivery of services. And then another open item that we could talk about is, does it go in this memo, or at some point, depending on how the budget gets shaped up for the year, are there contingencies or contingent plans that they might have if there's a need for, pick a number, 5% reduction? How might they do it? How would they approach that? It might be a little extreme, but I think in the first order, getting a better sense of, how do they manage the overall resources themselves, as opposed to what I think has been in the past, an incremental approach, or I guess in the past 2 years, if that's the case, just a level.
No, I think
debt service.
it's always been like that. I think, Marty, it's not just new. So yeah, there is room to change there. I would fully agree with you there. The other point that you made yesterday that I was interested in, Marty, was the idea of trying to get them to explain what metrics they use for assessing how well they deliver services. And I think that's something that would be interesting for us to sort of work out how we might word that in the guidance letter.
Yeah. I don't know if others have thoughts on that, whether that makes sense or might want to expand on it or minimize it.
How do you want to proceed with this, Woody?
Well, maybe what we should do is have everyone on the committee think about things that they might like to include in the charge to the town committee's questions that they might want answered when we kind of meet with the leadership. And for example, as Marty says, what kind of metrics they use. Another question might be, are we adequately addressing the prevention mitigation of climate change going forward? There are several things that might be that are common to a large number of town services that might be worth asking everyone to address, and might be things that we could put in the letter and ask people to get back to us on. So maybe come to next week's meeting with whatever your suggestions are around what might be included.
I've found, Woody, that it's helpful to come up with a draft to allow people to sort of bounce their ideas off as well. Yep. And if we could have a draft for that next meeting, and it doesn't mean we can't change it substantially afterwards, but yep, without having anything to talk to, it becomes a little bit of a talking shop, and we don't really get much accomplished.
Yep. Well, Marty and I could potentially come up with a draft, but before next week, and then and then we could use that as a kind of platform for addressing other people's concerns.
Mhm. Does that work for everybody? Okay. So what else do we have to talk about tonight? I think I've discussed everything that I thought we should consider. I guess the only question is, can we do a meeting next Wednesday at 7 o'clock? Does that work for people? I mean, historically, we've always had the meetings on Wednesday. There's no particular reason why we should. It just became, I think it's worthwhile having a predictable night that people can plan for, because if it's all over the place, we get into situations where you start getting conflicts because you sort of booked something and then, oh, now we're going to have it on that night. So I would recommend that you consider when it should be held. It doesn't have to be a Wednesday night. It just sort of happened that way. But when Woody, do you want to have the next meeting?
I think a week from tonight would make sense if people think that they can make that.
Any objections?
I may need to step out earlier, just because I have family coming to visit from Brazil. So I don't know exactly. Yeah, I don't know exactly, when they are arriving, how they are arriving yet, all the details.
Fair.
But I'll do my best to join at least part of it, if possible.
Great.
So is there a quorum? Like, how many committee members are there, and how many need to be present for like a meeting or votes to actually count?
Right, 9 members, and we have got a full quotient. Although I think Melissa is resigning soon. That's what she's indicated to me. So I'll need to get another member there. But so 9 members and 4 is a quorum.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing is we can't sort of meet in multiples together. There are these state rules for making sure we don't have little cabals sort of trying to steer things. And so I recommend that you work through Woody if you've got questions or issues you want to address, and he can then suggest a path forward for that. We just have to avoid the notion of, I mean, one-on-one meetings with people is great. Two and more starts to become a little challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly welcome just a set schedule, Wednesdays at 7, that where whatever time works for everybody, but just to know that that's happening.
Right.
And I personally, not that it's required, but I would be more than willing to go down to the town hall and sit with 2 or 3 people in person and have others participate remotely. But
right.
I'm willing to do that too.
Yeah, I think occasionally meeting in person is very useful. You develop different relationships than over a screen.
Sure.
One other thing we did last year was to have a couple of parties. Janet was very kindly put on a year-end party, which we all went to and enjoyed immensely. And I had a party earlier on in the year as well. And I think that helps just sort of people to feel as part of the group, and it's a group building exercise in the end. And I think that's useful. Okay, so is everybody in agreement? Meeting next Wednesday, so that's the 16th, I believe. Okay.
Yes.
Then any other business that we need to consider? Woody, you might like to take over the hands of the meeting now. I think this is your baby now.
Okay. If there's no other new business, then Marty and I happy to entertain any agenda items that people want to schedule for next week. We'll try and get the agenda. The agenda has to be posted 3 days in advance, Cam. I think that's the limit. So
I think
we'll
it's
try to
5.
get
I'm not sure. Yeah.
we'll try and get the agenda to Felicia so she can post it sometime in the next 2 or 3 days. And then and we'll expect at least for the next month to be meeting Wednesday at 7. So unless there's additional business people have, I'm happy to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
I
moved.
move a motion that we adjourn. You beat me, Woody.
Okay.
Marty, I'll second it.
Good. So I think we can probably do this by acclamation. Is there all those opposed or all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and all those opposed? Great. So we'll convene again next Wednesday.
Great.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Thank you all
All
for
right.
attending.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.